All right, shalom, shalom. First off, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, giving double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS whom taught me this truth. Salutes and honors to all the elect brothers out here who are enduring in both truth and in sincerity of the men and women who follow. This is the brother Kratazah from the founders of Living Waters coming back at you with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. This lesson being entitled "Go Pro in This Gospel." All right, so I asked Google, what does it mean to go pro? So go pro in the context of sports or skill means to transition from amateur status to professional status by receiving compensation for your performance or expertise. Right. So um, when I say go pro, and Lord is the edifying lesson. But when I say, go pro in this gospel, it's speaking about, like it says, coming up from an amateur status to a professional status. When we were in the world, you may have went to church, or you may have heard a few scriptures, or um, had a inclination for the Most High. But when you come into this truth, it's like you're going pro, right? You're actually putting in the work, that it takes. That's the skill. That is the. It says typically by receiving a compensation for your performance or expertise. Yeah, if I can find my mouse, yeah, bear with me. Here we go. So matter of fact, bear with me a second. Let me grab this preset. All right, call all your best Shai. So as I was saying, um, going pro, kind of takes a compensation for your performance or expertise. So, what is the disciples' reward for going pro in this truth? This is Matthew 19:27. It says, "Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Yahushua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel." Right? Now, this is the reward for the disciples, right? And we're going to go over that there's levels in this thing, just like in sports. There's levels in sports. You have a first round draft pick, you have a seventh round draft pick, and there's levels. Um, Verse 28, it says, "And Yahushua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit on the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel, and every one that hath forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life." Right? So that is the reward, that is the compensation that we get for going pro, right? For stepping up from the amateur status, from being on one side of the line to coming to the other side of the line, for just basically being a hearer of this word to being a doer of this word, you know? It says, "But many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first." And the people who are first in this life are going to be last in the next life to come, right? All of Israel is going to inherit the kingdom, but again, there's levels. You're going to have the ruling class, which is the 144,000 and the innumerable multitude. Those are going to be the the judges, the kings, the ruling class. Okay, and then you'll have the 2/3, the people who don't make it on this side. They will still be a higher class than the heathen, But again, there's rules. You'll have Yahushai and King David and the 12. and then the 144, and the numeral multitude, and then the 2/3, and then you have the heathen, and then you'll have Esau, you know. So that's how the order will go in the kingdom. So let's get into what does it mean to go pro? So when you go pro or when you go professional, normally they'll have a draft or whatnot. Everybody's, you they'll have like a combine where everybody shows what they got. Okay, well, in this truth, the Lord has given us what we were supposed to have in this truth from birth. So let's get that in Jeremiah. Yeah, so this is Jeremiah 1:4. It says, "Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." So, we were given our destination, all right, our vocation, which we're going to get into that word here shortly. We're given our office, all right, from birth, since before birth. All right, the Lord knew what he was doing when he made us, so to speak. All right, the spirit of the prophets are subject unto the prophets. So, and like I said, there's levels. You have, matter of fact, when let's see, I'm not gonna get the whole story, but it's good. Okay, let me see. So this is Matthew 25:14. It says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered them into his goods, and unto one he gave 5 talents, and to another he gave 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey." Right. So that one who got the 5 talents, that would be like a blue chip athlete, a blue chip prospect. Let's get that. So in sports, a blue chip prospect refers to a highly sought after athlete, particularly at the high school or collegiate level, who is considered a top tier talent with a high probability of success at the next level of competition, either in college or professional sports. So your blue chip athletes or your blue chip prospects in its truth will be someone who was supposed to be a camp leader, someone who may not be a camp leader, may be a second in command, may be someone who has knowledge in one subject or another. There's a lot of different ways, one could be, a so-called blue chip athlete. I'll give you an example like the apostles. The apostles are blue chips. You know, they're still here from the late 80s and the early 90s. You know what I mean? So like their star, you know what I'm saying? If you have like 5-star athletes, they're like 7 stars, but 8 stars, for eternity. But that's the whole point. You'll have, you know, the one who got the 5 talents, another 2, and another 1, because you may have someone who is, you know, um destined to be, that on that high level to lead men. Okay, and then you'll have men who are made to follow men. You'll have your 2 stars, okay, and you'll have your 1 stars. All right, but all to the same vocation, all to the same purpose. So, matter of fact, let's get that. Um, so This is Ephesians 4:1. It says, I therefore the prisoner of the Lord beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation where ye are called. So let's get this word vocation, which is Strong's G2821, klesis, where it says a calling to, a call, an invitation to a feast, or the divine invitation to embrace the salvation of the Most High. So our calling is this gospel, to preach and to teach this word, to learn this truth, preach this truth, teach this truth, understand the prophecies, understand the current events, understand the history, the law, all of it. Okay, it's all one. Um, it's all part of the calling. Okay, so this is what we have to go pro in. This is what we need to, go to the next level in, learning this history, learning this truth, learning the prophecies, learning what to look for, learning how to speak, learning how to deal with people, learning how to abound at a base. It's all part of this gospel. All right, it's not just one thing that you're good at. Matter of fact, let's get that. Let me see. What is a five tool player? I know I'm coming with a lot of sports analogies today, but in baseball, a five tool player is one who excels in all five of the key physical skills: hitting for average, hitting for power, speed, fielding, and throwing. All right, and you can take that to basketball or football as well. Someone who can handle the ball, someone who can, has good court awareness, someone who can play defense. There's different tools. The kids they call it a bag. You have to have a bag in this truth. You have to be able to go into history, to speak on the highways. You have to be able to talk to people and to know when you're dealing with how to speak to someone and what to say to someone. 1 second. You have to be able to interpret the scriptures, interpret the prophecies, know where to go to look for the prophecies to come to pass. It's all part of this gospel, all part of this vocation. So that five tool, we all have to be, five tool players. But coming into this truth, um, everyone has a rookie year. Everyone has a first year. And when you come into this truth, yes, you are expected to be a professional, but we're not expecting you to be, freaking Babe Ruth. You're not expected to be LeBron James year one. Now, year one, LeBron James was the rookie of the year, and you will have those um, blue chip brothers who come in and show promise and who accelerate in this truth. That's the lot that they were given. But you have other brothers who may come in who may be a little slower, or they get it progressively. We were all, matter of fact, let's just go get that real quick. um this is First Corinthians 12:4. It says, now there are diversities of gifts, but of the same Spirit, and there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord, and there are diversities of operation, but in the same, but it is the same power which worketh in all. Right. So you have people with different gifts, different blessings of the Lord. Okay, but it's all to the praise and glory of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. You may have someone who is uh, good in prophecy. You may have someone who is a good reader, strong reader. You may have someone who remembers precepts. You may have someone who remembers the history or is good in the history. These are diversity of gifts, but the Lord is giving all to be part of the body, right? So everyone brings something to the table, right? You're not getting drafted if you didn't bring anything to the table, right? Which the main thing you bring to the table is that hunger and want to um, serve the Lord, right? You got an unction to get up and to serve the Lord. So um, matter of fact, I wanted to jump down here and Ephesians 4:11 it says, and he gave some apostles and some prophets and some evangelists and some pastors and some teachers. All of us have a role to play. You know, it says, for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Hamashiach. So we all have a role to play in this thing. So what a good player does, he understands his role. You have what's called a 3-and-D player in the NBA. So let me see. Three and so in basketball, a 3-and-D player is a role player who excels at both shooting 3-pointers and playing strong defense, particularly on the perimeter. Right, that's his role. He shoots threes and he plays good defense. That's the perfect example of a man in his truth. Maybe he's a strong reader, and he remembers precepts. That's the 3-and-D in this truth. But you don't just, because the Lord gave you these gifts, you don't just rest on your laurels, right? You continue to build on being that 3-and-D player, but then you work on your handle. You work on your layup package, your court awareness. Which in this gospel, if you're a strong reader and a like I said, a strong reader, and you remember precepts, well then you go into the history, you go into prophecy. You expand your bag, so to speak. That's how you go from that rookie year, and everything is hitting you. You're drinking the milk. You're learning the easy things. You're going through the law. You're going through the books of Moses. The things that are easily to be understood, the Gospels, and then once you're starting to catch on and you understand. Now you get into Paul. All right, now you get into a little bit of the history. Joshua and Moses, David, the Babylonian captivities. Now you're rolling. Now you're in the second Ezra's. Now now you can get into Jeremiah. It's all about leveling up, but nobody gets it all in one day. You have to endure, of course. And like I said at the beginning, we're all playing to win. We're all playing to get into that kingdom of heaven. I did have this scripture, but we're gonna leave that alone. Yeah, that's really all I really wanted to get. Just we have to all go pro in this truth. The Lord ain't got you here for no reason. So recognize what is your skill set, okay, and anchor that, continue to build on that, but also expand your role, expand into other weaknesses, turn weaknesses into strengths. Okay. You know, yeah. So Lord's word is edifying. And with that being said, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakar Kadash, giving double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS whom taught me this truth. Salutes and honors to the elect, all the brothers across the four corners who are enduring in both truth and sincerity. Shalom.